There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, today I'll be trying to persuade my audience that Pete Rose should be allowed into the Hall of Fame for baseball. Pete Rose is known to be one of the best players to ever play the game of baseball and has broken many records while playing, but he only made one mistake. Pete Rose has not been allowed to the Hall of Fame ballots because of a rule that he has broken in the game of baseball, but there has also been multiple other players that have been allowed to the Hall of Fame ballots even if they've broken rules of the game. Today, I will be trying to persuade and explain to my audience why Pete Rose, one of the best to ever play the game of baseball, should be allowed back onto the Hall of Fame ballots. I have done a good amount of research on this topic throughout my life and have a genuine belief that Pete Rose should be allowed into the ballots. Now I will begin to explain why Pete Rose should be allowed on the Hall of Fame ballot. First, I will give you some background information on Pete Rose. Pete Rose, whose full name was Pete Charlie Rose, and whose nickname was Charlie Hustle because he was known to hustle all the time, was born on April 14, 1941 in Cincinnati, Ohio. Rose began playing baseball when he was 8, and then by the time he was 18, he got drafted by the Cincinnati Reds. After being in the minor league system for 3 years, he then joined the Reds Major League roster in 1963. After that, he then worked his way up the lineup and eventually won NL Rookie of the Year award, which is given to the best rookie in each division in the National and American League. He led the league in hitting in 1968 and 1969, and then in 1973, which is arguably one of his best years, in which he won his third batting title, given to the best hitter in each league, collected a career high of 230 hits in one season, and was also named the National League Most Valuable Player. Rose was also a part of a Cincinnati team that from 1970 to 1976 won 5 division titles, 4 National League pennants, and won the World Series in 1975 and 1976. When Rose retired as a player in 1986, he had recorded a record amount of hits at 4,256 hits. He also had the record for most games played at 3,562, most times at bat at 14,053, and is tied with the most seasons with 200 or more hits with Ichiro Suzuki, which is also a future Hall of Famer, with 10 2,000 hit seasons, according to Britannica.com. After Rose retired as a player, he then became the manager of the Cincinnati Reds Major League team. Now I'll begin to explain what Rose did wrong. What rule did Rose break, that you may ask? The rule that Pete Rose broke was Rule 21, Misconduct D. Betting on any ball games, any player, umpire, club, or league official, or employee who shall bet on any sum whatsoever upon any baseball game in connection with which the betterment has a duty to perform shall be declared permanently ineligible from the game of baseball. This basically means that anyone who has any kind of influence on the game can and will be declared ineligible if they are caught placing bets on the outcome of any game. The formal judgment of Rose's ineligibility came to agreement in 1989 between Commissioner A. Bartlett Giamatti and Pete Rose when Rose agreed to being banned from baseball for life in return, which for not making a formal determination on whether he did not or did make bets on any of the game of baseball, according to baseballreference.com. Rose agreed with his withdrawal from baseball while in the MLB, but still did not make any findings in relation to Rose's guilt. Rose then later was allowed to ask for a later reinstatement, but then soon after that date, the Hall of Fame then passed a rule that a banned player would then being eligible for election on the Hall of Fame ballot. As a result of this, Rose's name never appeared on any ballots. Now I will mention some other players that have broken rules but have still been allowed on Hall of Fame ballots. Some other players that have broken rules but have still been able to be put on Hall of Fame ballots. 3 other players that have already been admitted to the Hall of Fame have done suspicious activity to rule following and illegal usage of the following: Ivan Rodriguez, Tim Raines, and Jeff Bagwell, according to USA Today. All 3 of these players have been elected to the Hall of Fame with there being suspicious activity, suspicion of these players using PEDs, which are known as performance-enhancing drugs, and using illegal drugs like cocaine. The vote to allow these players into the ballot has definitely showed a softening towards some players that have been broken rules and should maybe end up to the allowance of Pete Rose onto a ballot, because if other players have been forgiven for their mistakes for what they have been proven guilty against, then Rose should be given the fair treatment of forgiveness as well. Ivan Rodriguez was known as the best offensive catcher to ever play the game, as he leads the catchers in hits, doubles, total bases, and hits. Even with this known, Ivan was accused of steroid use by former teammate Jose Canseco in Canseco's book. Ivan also suspiciously lost 30 pounds just before MLB's testing program with penalties in 2005. When questioned about his allegation, Rodriguez's response was, "Only God knows." Jeff Bagwell was a great power-hitting first baseman, of whom was also suspected of using PEDs. When questioned about his Hall of Fame process, he said it was an interesting process, and he also said anxiety was very, very high during his allegation period. Tim Raines' Hall of Fame route was suspicious because Raines was using a different type of drug, not known as PEDs or steroids. Raines admitted to spending $40,000 a year on cocaine during his testimony during the Pittsburgh drug trials. With this being known, Raines still never got suspended from the game. Also, 2 players that are most likely soon to be on Hall of Fame ballots and walking through the halls of Cooperstown, are Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds. Bonds was proven guilty of using steroids, and Clemens was accused of using PEDs throughout his entire career. If all these players have been suspected of using PEDs, steroids, and even illegal drugs like cocaine that aren't allowed anywhere, and then they can still be inducted into the Hall of Fame, then why doesn't Pete Rose get the same forgiveness as these players? Now I will begin to explain why Rose should be forgiven and should be allowed onto the ballots. Why Pete should be allowed into the Hall of Fame ballot. Pete Rose was a gambler, not a cheater. Now do not misunderstand the point. What Rose did was wrong, but why and how is he putting money down on a baseball game so much worse than injecting yourself with steroids or growth hormones or being addicted to cocaine? Not only this, but Rose bet on games while he was a manager, not a player. With this being said, his betting had nothing to do on the betterment of his statistics and percentages, while the other players who used steroids and PEDs, these drugs did help with the betterment of their statistics and percentages. The drugs they used helped them to be a better player, while what Pete Rose did had no effect on the way he played the game whatsoever. There's no way gambling affected the way Pete Rose played the game of baseball, but the PEDs and steroids other Hall of Famers used definitely affected their game. All these facts and statistics I have given hopefully have given you all the same view on Pete Rose's case of the career as I have. Now that I have given facts and evidence on the case of Pete Rose, I hopefully have persuaded you into having the same mindset as I do on the case of Pete Rose not being allowed onto any Hall of Fame ballots. Pete Rose should be given the same forgiveness the other players were given, and should be given the justice of his name of being put on the Hall of Fame ballot just because he was one of the greatest players to ever play the game. If Pete Rose would be allowed on Hall of Fame ballots, I'm pretty sure there would be another face in the halls of Cooperstown pretty soon, and many people would finally be at ease, as they know what Pete Rose was given what he deserved. The title of a Hall of Fame player. That's not something everyone gets. You best believe my bet would be that if he were allowed on the ballot, he would be voted in.